You're trying to find this thing that doesn't exist, and you always think you've found it. You've cheated the system. And in reality, you're just cheating yourself. And so finding the right people at the right price that can execute the right way is very, very important.
Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Visa Franchise and Vetted Biz. Excited to have on Greg Vetter, who is an accomplished entrepreneur in the food and branding space. I recently finished reading his book, Undressed, which definitely wasn't censored. And a lot of F-bombs that you dropped, and you gave the real story and how people looked, how people acted, and it was refreshing. You don't see many business books like that.
No, you do not. And that's actually why I wrote it.
So, Greg, you had quite a roller coaster, and I don't know, you probably got like 10 MBAs in this this span of time.
Unfortunately, yes.
Will you take it back? I don't know if I should ask that question at the end, but would you take any of this experience back?
No, it's funny because people ask me that all the time, actually, and I wouldn't. And I think the biggest reason I look back on who I was when I started it and even during it. And then I look at myself after making it through, reflecting, writing the book, being involved in, 6 or 7 different businesses right now. And I like who I am today way more than the guy I used to be. And overcoming obstacles and kind of having all of your fears exposed and, staring down the barrel of a gun, it'll change you. And so it changed me for the better. At least that's what my wife says.
You reference, I think, a few times in the book, God, Christianity, and I don't know if you know, but like a lot of saints really relish suffering and seek it out and really want suffering, which is kind of a crazy thing that I think most people can't understand.
Well, I can understand it. And I did actually, I guess God found me during it, which, I'd always been somewhat of a spiritual person and I was raised Catholic, but, then you kind of grow up and be an adult and you start over analyzing everything. But when you are kind of faced with all of your fears being realized and failure and ego being crushed and social backlash, and you're kind of left with only the things that are important, you start figuring out what is important and why am I going through this pain and suffering and this journey and all of this interesting analysis. And in that, I found God too, which I never expected, trying to hustle salad dressing or build a national brand or be an entrepreneur. You don't think that's going to come with it.
Well, Greg, we just have 30 minutes on this podcast, and there's a lot I want to get into, but you wrote a whole book on your experience. But those that aren't familiar with Undress and the Vetter brothers saga, what is Tessemae's All Natural, and how did you get started on this business?
I wanted to do something of substance with my life. And so every day I would go home and I would stand on my head at my lunch break from selling insurance, and I would wait for an epiphany. And one day I walked downstairs after almost breaking my neck and I couldn't find the 2-liter bottle of salad dressing that my mom had made for me. And I searched the townhouse and couldn't find it. Called my wife. She laughed at me and told me to open my eyes wider and keep looking. And it turned out a neighbor had broken into my house and stolen the salad dressing. And so I sat there and thought to myself, what kind of man steals another man's salad dressing? And then I thought, what kind of salad dressing is worth stealing? I'm going to start a salad dressing company. And so I cold called a grocery store and ended up getting a meeting and Googled my way into becoming a food manufacturer. And the next thing we know, over the course of the next 15 years, we built the #1 organic salad dressing brand in the country. And then it did not end as I thought it would end. It ended the complete opposite in basically a dumpster fire. And the book is about that entire unfiltered journey, as you said when we started. A lot of F-bombs in there.
So you went from a company that was valued zero
Yes.
to 300 million at some point,
Yep.
and then down to bankruptcy at, was it 5 mil?
4.5. Yep.
Or not? Okay. I'll give you the 5 mil. Let's
Yeah,
round up.
we'll round up. Make me feel a little
Uh,
better.
what did you learn from scaling the business and especially after facing the bankruptcy?
Scaling was interesting because we created what the people wanted. We created a brand that we would want to buy, and we didn't cut corners. And I think that was really the key, which was being really, really stubborn with quality and not listening to the experts from a food manufacturing perspective. So we ended up inventing clean manufacturing. So no one had successfully taken kind of a homemade salad dressing and mass produced it without thickening
Not having a bunch
agents.
of BS preservatives.
Yes. And we did that just because we were stubborn. And so the scaling part was fun, and there is a kind of recipe to that success. The manufacturing scaling was hard. The people scaling to meet growth expectations, hard. And then dealing with massive failure, hard, but a lot of lessons learned in all of it.
So what are some of the factors, I guess, beyond just having like an amazing product that led to the early success of Tessemae's?
Being really authentic. I think when people initially, everybody wants to be vested in something. They want to believe in something. They want to be a part of something. They want to have a story to tell their friends. We made the brand completely real and authentic, and we built everything around it so it was a story worth telling. And so once we had the product or the branding dialed in, the product and the quality reinforced the story that people wanted to be a part of. And I think that's what a lot of people get wrong is they'll create a brand that maybe it's beautiful, but if you dig in 2 layers down, it's nothing. And so I think people, especially today, they're searching for authentic voices, and those authentic voices can scale if they're real.
And I imagine like your initial sales efforts with doing the demos like really helped. Like you probably met, I don't know, between you, your brothers, and everyone that worked, like over 100,000 like customers, like face to face.
It was the key. So one of my first horrible jobs, I was sitting in a model home in a 55 plus community, hustling friggin' houses. And it was interesting because over 80% of the homes selected were the models that you could walk into. And so I was like, okay, so people just buy what they try. And so I'm like, we don't have a marketing budget. We don't have an advertising budget, but it tastes really good.
Yeah.
I can tell people the story. Create a moment. They can try it. The product reinforces my bullshit. And then I can create this moment where then they'll go home and go, you're never going to believe the crazy story I had today. I met this guy. He took his mom's salad dressing. It was delicious. I bought 3 bottles. You got to try it. And so we successfully did that across the country, and we demoed in every grocery store basically in America.
And were you just kind of came up with this go to market? Were there any other companies that did this?
No.
Space?
No. Yeah, no. We were just out there grinding, just handing out samples like there was no tomorrow. Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, Monday night. We had people in grocery stores all over the country just handing out samples nonstop.
One thing that I think is overlooked is the location that you set up the business or scale the business. And we've worked with hundreds, over 1,000 foreign entrepreneurs moving to the US. Some of them are going to hire a ton of Americans, and there's some negotiating power they can swing with counties, city development agencies, even on the state level. Can you go into more details about how you and your brothers worked with county and city development agencies, and even played them off each other to get a really good deal to grow your business in that community?
We got a pretty good deal, but there were definitely better deals out there in the world. And so I think just creating competition at a minimum is going to benefit anybody. We used to wax our dressings like Maker's Mark. And so we would dip every bottle of salad dressing in wax. And so my brother
You should
went,
have paid for that, right? You should have like paid that guy millions of dollars to be able to
well,
get
well, it's
taught
funny.
that
Yeah. So my brother Brian went down to Maker's Mark and met with their head of bottling.
down in Kentucky, right?
Yeah, in Lebanon County, Kentucky. And
It's
he
so
thought we were so crazy that, these three aggressive brothers were hustling salad dressing and dipping the bottles in wax that he connected us with his wax supplier. Their lawyers wrote us a
exclusive
letter.
wax supplier.
Yes, they invented it. It is patented wax. Uh, and we had to sign basically a document that said, well, we will never use red. Ours was kind of
Okay.
like a dark maroon at the time. And they were so impressed that they called Kentucky State Development, and we got a phone call from Kentucky, and they're like, we want you. We'll do anything for you guys to come down here. And so they gave us a proposal. We took it to the state of Maryland. They kind of were not really that interested. But then word got around that we were thinking about moving to Kentucky, and some county executives had heard about it. They
Baltimore
start
County.
initially it was Howard County,
Okay,
and
yeah.
then they called Baltimore County, and then they found us this great manufacturing facility. And then we were able to negotiate with the real estate developer. And so the whole thing ended up coming together because we had a really great proposal from a different state, and we were able to create some competition.
And if you don't mind just like talking about the proposal, like I guess why would they give you a proposal to move to Kentucky and what was in that proposal?
Well, it's really about sustainable, good paying manufacturing jobs. I think at the end of the day, that's still a massive need, and it's just massively overlooked in terms of making stuff for real here and giving people jobs that pay well. And the craziest part is then when you can build a brand that is a premium brand and there's profits, and then you need high quality out of that product and those people, you can start paying people really, really well. And so that's what we were doing in Baltimore. And that was also just the general proposal that we put in there for Kentucky, which
So
was,
above market
yeah,
manufacturing jobs. And what are we talking about? 50, 100 jobs?
yeah, yep. At one point, I think we got up to like 250 people or something. Right. And it's, you read these, articles. It's like, there's no good paying job. I'm like, then you're not, you weren't looking in salad dressing in Baltimore, because we were begging people to come work for us. And paying really great wages. So,
What are we talking about in terms of wages? Much more than they would get another job for that similar type of candidate?
oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, health insurance, we gave stock options to people that were there, Christmas bonuses. We really just kind of we wanted just consistent people that cared, because for us, it was all about culture. We were growing rapidly. That's a very kind of aggressive manufacturing schedule. So you have to be okay with, I don't want to use the phrase chaos, but you're not doing the same thing every day. You're doing a lot of different stuff every day, and you got to keep a positive attitude. And so we were willing to pay for that.
And the state and then going to the county level in Maryland, they were willing to give like massive tax credits or what type of concessions so you could grow your company profitably.
Yeah, no, Maryland actually didn't really help that much with that type of stuff. In retrospect, we probably should have gone to Kentucky and took advantage of all of that, because they were offering a lot of it. But at the same time, on our growth trajectory, we didn't have a lot of time to methodically and slowly map it out. And so if entrepreneurs are out there today and they have that kind of methodical timeline to do that type of stuff, I mean, every state in the United States of America is looking for good paying manufacturing jobs. You could literally do a national freaking bidding process if the jobs are paying well and they're of substance.
So it's definitely something to consider, especially, someone coming from abroad. Maybe they don't have many, family ties at all in the US, and they're fine going, wherever. It might make sense to really shop around, where for you, it came down partly to family and being close to Annapolis and not having to uproot everyone, I imagine.
It was that, but it was more so that we were going to have to build a plant in Kentucky, and there was one already move-in ready. And so if that plant was not move-in ready, we were out. But we saw this like really beautiful window. It was almost a gift where it was like, yeah, there's randomly a perishable food manufacturing facility with refrigeration and freezer space 35 minutes from your home. You're like, we're doing it.
Yeah, that makes a
Right?
lot of sense. It's like franchisees that go in a second gen location. Maybe there was some other type of business there, and they're able to get in for a lot, open up fast, and do it more like.
100%. My buddy's doing that with coffee shops in Washington, D.C. right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen from our clients that they can get in, usually half the cost, and instead of opening in 9 to 15 months, open in like 6 months. And Greg, what advice would you give entrepreneurs today about accessing capital? As you ran the gamut. You had private investors, I think friends and family, maybe not.
Yep.
Like a coach, and then you had debt finance, pretty aggressive debt, loan sharks. You had a major family office, so you had a lot of different sources of capital as you built this.
Yes.
What type of advice would you give entrepreneurs?
Focus on what you care about the most. So some people care about equity the most. Focus on areas that protect the thing you care about the most. And then be unbelievably ruthless with protecting what you care about. And also do not rush that process. I would say the biggest issue we had was that we were growing so fast that every time we needed to raise money, that process was very chaotic because the model and the information was always changing and evolving, because we'd go from one retailer to 3 national retailers to, so it was always kind of very chaotic because of growth. The best is just methodically preparing for it and raising it in kind of a very slow and diligent, methodical way so that you can get the best terms, because there's almost unlimited resources to get it. And then it really comes down to who is going to be the partner that you actually want to work with long term.
And how are you going about it the second time around with Homegrown Brands and the produce business?
Yeah, I mean, we're just bankrolling it ourselves now.
Nice.
I've learned a lot. I created a filter for business partners and new ventures that kind of take all of the wounds I have from 15 years and go, well, why did that happen? And what character trait did that person have that I was choosing to ignore? And so I look at it very, very differently. But for the most part, it's like, we're running profitable businesses on a large scale, and we can just go get traditional bank debt if we need it.
Now, I guess you're happier growing at a more sustainable pace, where before it was, get to 10 mil, 20 mil, 30 mil in revenue.
Yeah. I mean, back then it was, that was like the top line sales growth era with valuations that were just bananas. And now, I played that game. I don't know if I enjoyed that game in retrospect. And so now it just, my identity and my ego and my kind of business tenure here is not tied to just some completely irrelevant metric that no one gives a shit about except for people that you don't even care about. You see all the LinkedIn and they're posting and it's oh, just raise this giant thing. And you're
Building
like,
in public.
right. And you're just like, that means nothing, like that means nothing. You are setting yourself up for disaster. And I was that guy, and I learned the hard way, and I got a book out of it. So
Greg, what are some of the hiring obstacles you face and how did you address them?
yeah, hiring obstacles, it's so difficult because when you get to like the highest echelon of business, you just now I know it's like you look at somebody and it's either have it or you don't. You know how much that person costs. There is no, hey, will you take 50? It's like I cost 500. Like and so when you're young, you're trying to find this thing that doesn't exist. And you always think you've found it. You've cheated the system. And in reality, you're just cheating yourself. And so finding the right people at the right price that can execute the right way is very, very important. But then also understanding that if someone agrees to these terms, you then need to rethink about who they actually are and what their capabilities actually are. Because it's like, yeah, you may give them a title of VP of sales or marketing, but a real VP of something is not taking 35 grand from a tiny salad dressing company. You know what I'm saying? But when you're young, you don't know that. You think you've cheated the system. Oh, I found the best CFO and he's willing to take $65,000. You're like, that's not, no, buddy, you're in trouble.
And it seems like in your book, you lean heavily on the relationships and kind of people, even from your adjacent neighborhoods, obviously your siblings, friends of friends to really grow. Did that help when there were tough times? Because there was that common bond to kind of stick through it, or how do you view that? Hiring close to you.
It was helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
At other times, it was not, just because you may understand what it takes. They may not. And so having the conversations on expectations, and if people aren't meeting them, they all kind of revert back to that bonding pattern that you had before the business. And so that makes it very awkward. But if you find good people, my brothers, my wife, Kristen Tessemae, Mo Taylor, that have been with us forever, it's amazing when things go bad because they'll be with you. The craziest part about it was some of the people that I thought were in the camp that I just named. When things got real bad and I had been defending their honor to the board for years, they're just like, all right, see ya. Yeah, I got a better job. You're like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? You've been a topic of the past 5 board meetings that you're incompetent, and I have defended you. So that always, that actually hurts more.
Definitely, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And then how about these, like, I did entrepreneur organization for a few years and I did their accelerator program. I know you mentioned the book YPO.
Yep.
What are your feelings about these? I don't know what they're called. They're not really networking. They're
it's like a peer-to-peer
group.
It's like a peer-to-peer group. Like, it's almost executive coaching, but there's no executive coach. It's just these small groups that kind of keep you in check. I wish I had found it earlier. Very, very, very helpful. Really enjoy it. It has created massive amounts of value in my life that I actually, in retrospect, was missing. And I highly recommend anybody getting into those types of areas, because I think the biggest thing, it's lonely at the top, they say. Yes, that is true. The other piece is just perspective. You think your problems are special, and they're not special. And they're not specific to industry. and they're not specific to you. Every single leader is going through very similar stuff. And there are best practices and there are ways to frame it differently so that you can get through these dark times better or keep yourself in check during the really good times, because that's usually where the wheels fall off. When things are going a little too well, you get a little too big for your britches.
That's well said. Greg, looking back, what unexpected obstacles did you encounter that ultimately shaped your journey, and how would you approach them differently now?
The unexpected obstacles, definitely the end, when everybody lawyered up and kind of went against the existing team and just kind of killed it from the inside out. I did not expect that old adage of pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. You hear it, but you don't know what that actually means until you see people willing. They only want everything. And you're like, and that's how I summarized it, because, we hired a professional negotiator and he's like, watch me work. I go, unless you're going to give them everything, they will not negotiate.
What is it up with people that just want total control? And I guess they think they can do it better than you, who's working 80-hour weeks and, has been doing this for 15 plus years.
I think it's a mix of that and just greed.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think people think that they can bully you into submission.
Yeah.
And that usually works with people because their identities or their egos are tied to social recognition or, and mine's not. And so, they tried all the normal stuff and it just didn't work. And so it ended up going to nothing. And it could have been something so massive where everybody 10x their money, 20x their money, and then everybody was left with nothing. It's just insane to even think about.
Yeah, it's interesting that what I've seen, we had interviewed a franchisee that had nothing to lose. So he just went, against the Goliath franchisor and just kept fighting. And franchisor, best law firm, the guy lives in a $5 million house. And he keeps fighting today. And it seems like there's a certain personality type or situation where, people aren't willing to be bullied, and it can have a really outsized impact on not just themselves, but, other people in the business community.
Mm-hmm.
This bad behavior sadly is commonplace by people in power.
Well, and they have the resources to execute. I think that's the biggest thing with smaller groups is that's a part of their business. The bigger groups, it's a part of their business plan. They have lawyers on salary, man. You're paying hourly. So you're not ready.
Bills for you guys at the end were was it $300K a month your company was paying?
And growing. Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah, I've heard that from, friends of friends that are, have had startups in the medical device space, and there's a big Goliath and they'll just hit with lawsuits. They're also all over the tech space. And it's sad. There should be some, let's see with the new administration, but some mechanism to kind of protect the new startups from that kind of BS business behavior.
Well, it's just crazy because when you're young and inexperienced, you think, oh my gosh, this person's getting sued. They must have done something. And it's like, no, that's a tactic. And they're going to bleed you dry.
For any reason, where other countries, the judge has to see that there's validity to this for it to have any merit before there's crazy expenses that come out. What advice would you give immigrant entrepreneurs or anyone looking to make their own American dream a reality based on all that you've gone through over the last 15 plus years?
Don't listen to too many people. Don't listen to my advice. You should read the book, prepare yourself about what can possibly happen. Use that as a pressure test to see if you're prepared for that level of journey. But it's just action. I think so many people want to think about it too long. Take action, take that single step, just move forward with it. And if you do that every day, if there's forward progression every day, you will get somewhere. And that somewhere is going to be a place you haven't been before. And it's going to change your perspective on what's possible. And you're going to immediately begin to figure out how to get to the next place a little bit more efficiently. And that would just be my suggestion for anyone that wants to follow their dream. It's just begin, take action, and don't be scared of what's coming your way, because a lot's going to be coming. And you should probably not overthink the pain coming your way.
And then I guess with your new venture, it's different. And I think a lot of our clients, they have successful businesses, revenue 500K, a million, 2 million, and then they are happy to grow at a very small rate, high single digits, low double digits. But it does seem like when you scale up, 50, 100, 200 employees, it's a whole new ball game. And that's not necessarily for everyone. And people probably have to think twice before doing that.
100%. It is not for the faint of heart.
Well, awesome, Greg. It was great to have you on. Anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to leave off to our listeners?
No, I think the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Awesome. So we'll include a link to your book, Undressed. And Greg, it was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Thanks.